What if everything you knew about the world suddenly expanded, revealing a whole new hemisphere ripe for exploration and exploitation? Would you venture into the unknown? Imagine a time when the maps ended at the horizon and beyond that, only myths and speculation. Then picture the shock, the exhilaration, the fear, and the greed that gripped the hearts of men when whispers of a new world began to circulate. It was an era when the known world was flipped on its head and the unknown beckoned with promises of gold, spices, and uncharted territories. European nations, hungry for power and wealth, were drawn like moths to the flame of this newfound land. The allure was irresistible, the stakes were high, and the game of exploration and exploitation was on. It was a time of monumental voyages, daring explorers, and world-changing discoveries. This is the story of the European exploration of the Americas, a tale of courage, curiosity, and conquest. In the late 15th century, a daring Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus took to the seas under the Spanish flag. With the blessings of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, Columbus embarked on a voyage that would forever change the course of human history. His goal? To find a westward route to the rich spice markets of Asia. Though Asia was not what he found. Instead, Columbus stumbled upon a world entirely unknown to him. On October 12, 1492, Columbus and his crew set foot on an island in the Bahamas, thus marking the discovery of a new world, the Americas. Columbus's interactions with the indigenous peoples he encountered were fraught with tension and misunderstanding. Despite the awe-inspiring civilizations that existed in the Americas long before Columbus's arrival, he viewed the indigenous peoples as primitive, paving the way for exploitation and colonization. His voyages back to Europe were laden with gold, exotic plants, and sadly, enslaved indigenous peoples. The tales of his voyages ignited a spark in Europe, a spark that would kindle the flames of exploration and conquest. It was the dawn of a new era, where European powers would scramble to stake their claim in the New World. The impact of Columbus's voyages was profound and far-reaching. For Europe, it opened up new horizons, new opportunities for trade and wealth. For the Americas, it marked the beginning of centuries of colonial rule, cultural transformation, and the tragic decimation of indigenous populations. Yet it's essential to remember that Columbus's discovery was a discovery only from a European perspective. The Americas were already home to millions of people with rich and diverse cultures, histories, and civilizations. Columbus's voyages marked the beginning of a new era of exploration and colonization. His name is forever etched in our history books, a symbol of the bold spirit of exploration and a reminder of the price paid by those who stood in the path of empire. Following Columbus's footsteps, many European explorers embarked on their own journeys to the New World. The age of exploration was a period of discovery, driven by curiosity, ambition, and the promise of wealth. Among the many explorers who ventured across the Atlantic, a few names stand out, contributing significantly to the European understanding of the Americas. First, let's talk about Amerigo Vespucci. An Italian explorer, Vespucci was the first to suggest that the lands discovered by Columbus were part of a separate continent, previously unknown to Europeans. In recognition of his insight, this new continent was named after him, America. Vespucci's voyages along the eastern coast of South America also helped to dispel the common belief at the time that the New World was part of Asia. Moving on, we have Vasco Núñez de Balboa, a Spanish explorer. Balboa is most famous for his expedition across the Isthmus of Panama in 1513. It was a journey fraught with peril, but at its end, Balboa became the first European to gaze upon the Pacific Ocean from the American continent. This discovery provided Europe with the knowledge of a new ocean, opening up possibilities for further exploration and trade. Last, but certainly not least, we have Ferdinand Magellan. A Portuguese explorer sailing for Spain, Magellan is best known for his expedition that resulted in the first circumnavigation of the Earth. Though he did not complete the voyage himself, meeting a tragic end in the Philippines, his crew carried on, proving that the world was indeed round and much larger than anyone had imagined. Magellan's journey also led to the first European crossing of the Pacific Ocean, paving the way for Spanish conquests in the Philippines and beyond. These explorers, each in their own way, expanded the European understanding of the New World. They charted previously unknown territories, discovered new routes, and interacted with indigenous populations. Their journeys were not just physical but intellectual, challenging and reshaping the European perception of the world. But the age of exploration was not just about discovery. It was also a time of conquest, a time when European powers began to stake their claims on the New World. The journeys of Vespucci, Balboa and Magellan were not just voyages of exploration, but the first steps towards the colonization of the Americas. The territories they explored would soon become colonies, exploited for their resources and forever changed by European influence. In conclusion, the Age of Exploration was a pivotal period in history that reshaped our understanding of the world. The explorers who ventured into the unknown did not just discover new lands, they opened up a new era of interaction between the old world and the new. These explorers paved the way for the European colonization of the Americas. But as we'll see in the next scene, this colonization had profound and lasting impacts on the indigenous peoples of the Americas. While the Europeans saw the Americas as a new world, for the indigenous peoples, it was their home. This statement rings with poignant truth as we delve into the impact of European exploration on the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Imagine this: you've lived your whole life in a world that's familiar and comfortable. Then one day, strangers arrive. They look different, speak a language you can't understand, and carry strange tools and weapons. This was the reality for the indigenous peoples when the Europeans first set foot on the shores of the Americas. One of the most devastating impacts of this contact was the introduction of diseases. The Europeans carried with them smallpox, measles and influenza among others, to which the indigenous populations had no immunity. These diseases spread like wildfire, decimating whole communities. It's estimated that within a century after initial contact, the indigenous population declined by up to 90% in some regions. That's nearly 9 out of every 10 people gone. This loss was not just in numbers, but in the rich tapestry of culture, knowledge and history that these communities held. The Europeans didn't just bring diseases, they also brought an insatiable thirst for wealth and resources. Indigenous peoples were often forced into labor, mining for gold and silver, or working on plantations. Their lives, once dictated by the rhythms of nature and their cultural traditions, were now controlled by the whims of these foreign powers. The concept of freedom as they knew it was irrevocably altered. Cultural disruption was another significant consequence of European exploration. The Europeans, often seeing themselves as superior, sought to civilize the indigenous peoples. They imposed their languages, religions and societal structures, often through violent means. Indigenous practices and beliefs were suppressed and many aspects of their cultures were lost or irrevocably changed. This cultural imposition was not just an attack on the indigenous people's ways of life but on their identities. However, it's important not to paint the indigenous peoples as mere victims. Despite the immense challenges, they showed incredible resilience and adaptability. They resisted, rebelled, and negotiated. They adopted some aspects of European culture and technology that benefited them, while fiercely preserving key parts of their own cultures. Their stories are not just ones of loss and suffering, but also of strength and survival. The exploration of the Americas was a double-edged sword, bringing prosperity to some and devastation to others. For the Europeans, it meant new opportunities, wealth, and power. But for the indigenous peoples, it was a whirlwind of change that left deep scars. As we reflect on this history, let's remember that it is not just a tale of exploration and discovery, but also a story of resilience, survival, and the enduring spirit of humanity. The European exploration of the Americas left an indelible mark on the world. From the 15th century onward, the European powers embarked on a grand journey of discovery and conquest, venturing across the perilous Atlantic Ocean to the Americas. The legacy of this exploration era is far-reaching and complex, etching profound impacts on the world's history, culture, and geography that continue to resonate today. One of the most significant outcomes of the European exploration was the rise of colonial empires. Spain and Portugal, pioneers of the Age of Exploration, established vast territories across the Americas. England, France, and the Netherlands soon followed suit, setting up colonies that would later evolve into present-day nations such as the United States and Canada. These empires amassed immense wealth through the exploitation of the New World's resources, propelling Europe into a period of unprecedented prosperity and global dominance. Another key consequence of the European exploration was the inception of the Atlantic slave trade. The insatiable demand for labor in the plantations and mines of the New World led to the forcible transportation of millions of Africans across the Atlantic. This tragic chapter in human history left a lasting scar, shaping the demographic, social and cultural landscape of the Americas. But amidst the exploitation and conquest, the European exploration also sparked an unprecedented cultural blending. The meeting of the Old World and the New led to the exchange of ideas, technologies, foods, languages, and diseases, in a process known as the Columbian Exchange. From the introduction of European livestock and crops to the Americas, to the spread of indigenous foods like potatoes and corn to Europe, this exchange transformed diets and farming practices across the globe. The intermingling of cultures also enriched the world's artistic, linguistic, and intellectual tapestry, giving rise to new forms of music, literature, and philosophy. Yet it's important to remember that this cultural blending often occurred against a backdrop of coercion and violence, as indigenous cultures were suppressed or outright destroyed by the European colonizers. The loss of indigenous languages, traditions, and knowledge is a painful part of this legacy, a wound that continues to be felt by indigenous communities across the Americas. In conclusion, the European exploration of the Americas was a pivotal event that reshaped the world in profound ways. From the rise of colonial empires, to the start of the Atlantic slave trade, from the cultural blending to the loss of indigenous heritage, the effects of this exploration era are deeply intertwined with our present reality. The echoes of this exploration era still reverberate today, shaping our world in countless ways. The European exploration of the Americas was a pivotal chapter in human history, filled with triumphs and tragedies. As we approach the end of our journey through history, let's pause for a moment to reflect on what we've learned. The European exploration of the Americas was not a simple tale of discovery, it was a complex tapestry woven from threads of ambition, curiosity, courage, and sadly, a fair share of cruelty and destruction. The explorers who set sail from Europe in search of new lands were driven by a spirit of adventure and a thirst for knowledge. They embarked on perilous journeys into the unknown, guided by the stars and their dreams of fortune and glory. Their voyages led to the mapping of vast territories, the discovery of new routes and resources, and the establishment of colonies that would eventually grow into some of the world's most powerful nations. However, these achievements came at a great cost. The indigenous peoples of the Americas bore the brunt of this collision between worlds. They were decimated by diseases to which they had no immunity, dispossessed of their lands, and often subjected to brutal treatment by the colonizers. The echoes of these injustices still reverberate in our world today, reminding us of the darker side of exploration and conquest. Our understanding of this period in history has evolved over the years. We no longer view the explorers as unblemished heroes, nor do we see the indigenous peoples as passive victims. Instead, we recognize the complexities of this era, appreciating the courage and resilience of the explorers, while acknowledging the strength and endurance of the indigenous peoples. We've also come to understand the profound impact of these events on the world as we know it today. The exploration of the Americas triggered a global exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures, shaping the course of history and transforming societies on both sides of the Atlantic. But it also set in motion patterns of exploitation and inequality that continue to shape our world. As we reflect on these events, we are reminded of the power of curiosity and the human spirit's innate desire to explore. Yet we're also confronted with the sobering reality of the harm that can result when this desire is unchecked by respect for human rights and the environment. The exploration of the Americas is a chapter of our shared history that invites us to reflect on the past, to learn from it, and to use those lessons to inform our actions in the future. It's a reminder that history is not just a series of events that happened long ago, but a living, breathing entity that continues to influence our lives. As we delve into the past, we gain insights that can illuminate our path into the future. Let's take these lessons to heart, cherishing the spirit of exploration while striving for a future where the pursuit of knowledge and progress is guided by respect for all of humanity and the world we inhabit. As we delve into the past, we gain insights that can illuminate our path into the future.